Hi, everyone. This is Teris Dunn-Jaglowicz. I decided to kind of cover the EOG preparation and basically how I approach it every year. So just to kind of heads up, this is year 7 for me teaching, and out of the 7, it was just 1 year that we did not test. So I've kind of approached it somewhat differently every year, but the stuff that I'm going to talk about today has consistently been the same every year. So my first reference point, when looking at content, I always, well, not just myself and my PLC, because this is something that we do plan together. So, but the way it's set up, you can plan it with your PLC, or if you're a singleton, it can be planned still to where even if it's just you, we look at the assessment blueprint. And this goes back to when we're planning out our lessons and things like that. We know that our biggest units for 8th grade science include matter and waves. When you look at the percentages, you see those are the biggest sections. And when we set up our pacing, we typically spend not the most time in there, but we spend a good bit of time in those 2 units, since those are the big 2 units, or the 2 big units, I should say. The other units they're shorter, and what we've noticed too, 1 year we kind of did not place emphasis as much on the smaller ones, and it was not very beneficial for us. So we try to make sure we give an equal amount of time, and then try to pace it out to give ourselves enough time to review, which is going to bring me to my next point, the duration. So again, and I'll be honest, my PLC and I, we usually know ahead of time who it is. So we plan out, and again, it could be just you and your PLC, or it could be just you, because there's some planning that I do independently. We start planning during the summer. I actually will start some planning right after EOG for the next school year, because usually by then I already know what I'm teaching, if I'm moving or anything like that. One thing that has worked is that EOG review, for me, I've kept it continuous throughout the school year. We may move on to a different unit, but I still go back and reference some of those previous units, some of the previous standards and things. One way, or really the main way that I do this, is with my warm up. I call it a bell ringer. I know some people call it a warm up still, or a sponge, a do now. But my bell ringers and my exit tickets. So majority of the time, my bell ringer questions, my warm up questions, are going to be some sort of review question. We could be focusing on motion. The question may come from matter or energy, and this is just a quick way to review with the students, and to remind them to, okay, this stuff needs to stay fresh on your mind, because as we're moving on in different units, the students will see how everything is connected. But again, this is just how I keep it fresh on their mind. My second point, utilize as much instructional time as possible. When you're teaching, I'm not saying use all your instructional time on EOG preparation, but just maximize your time. One thing I will do, if I have like a very short lesson and my students love this, and it's not something that's over the top, or it's actually 2 different strategies. The first one is whiteboard review. With whiteboard review, we get out the whiteboards and the markers. I have tables, so I know some teachers like to just write on the desktop, but since I have tables and the tops are black, you can't see anything. So with the whiteboards, I'll project my questions on the board, and these will be questions from our warm-up PowerPoint, from assessments, questions that we've put together, whether if it's as a PLC or independently from different question banks, or we actually do take the time to sit down and try to write some questions together, some 3D assessment, 3D planning questions as a PLC, and kind of review that way as well. So then again, the kid, it kind of helps ease their anxiety. They're very anxious because they're like, I have not taken an EOG since the 5th grade, and here I am in 8th grade. A science EOG, I should say. I encourage my students to maximize their time as well. And by maximize it on their end, some of them come to tutoring to get additional support. We, as a school, have what's called AM support, where they can go in, and if I have assignments set up online, they can go in and do those assignments as practice, and I cash them back in as bonus grades as a trade-off, just to kind of keep them in the swing of things. And then, as I've already mentioned, just make sure you plan out your pacing. So with my planning, we try to plan it to where we have a week of review. And I know now with the way legislation is and how things have changed, our goal we set out this year is to have 2 weeks of planning. So we'll see how that goes. Last year, I think we finished where we had 1 week, but I was out the rest of the school year. So I was coordinating with my sub, and we still made it work. Okay. So I mentioned one strategy already that I use, which is whiteboard review, and that's just something I use for review regardless. Another strategy is kind of like a game, trash get ball. Saving the trees here. We get papers. Now I do have to remind the students, do not use a current paper for my class or for another class. And I tell them, in my class, all of your papers are important, so please do not use one of those. But we get some sort of paper, scrap paper, notebook paper, make basketballs, and as they answer questions, if they get the question correct, I usually pick out certain spots in the room where they can go stand and try to make a basket with the trash get ball. So that's another one that they enjoy doing as well. We will do Jeopardy. This year, our big thing has been quizzes. The kids have enjoyed quizzes, and I actually enjoy quizzes because you can put the board on the screen and it's like a competition, and you can see where everybody lands. So a lot of practice that way. And I know quizzes has also set it to where you can kind of make it like an interactive lesson as well. You can do the questions and, of course, stop and talk about them. Now, we also have discussions as well. One thing that I do, and I probably will mention this again later on, we set up a data folder. And in this data folder, the students keep all of their assessments, quiz, CFAs, unit tests, everything is in that folder, and we keep it in order. So then that way, and they're tracking their progress as they go. So as we get closer to EOG, they can go back and see, okay, this is an area I need to work on. Maybe I did not do so hot on matter, or maybe specifically I struggle with pure substances and mixtures, and then I need to work on that. And I keep referring back to matter a lot because for my county, matter is our first unit. I know everybody's a little bit different. So that's the furthest one. So we're constantly, because it's so far out, we try to make sure that we keep as much fresh on their mind as possible when it comes to that one, because we started in August and they test in May now, basically. Another strategy that I tried the last time, not this past year, so it's been about maybe, I'd say about 3 years since I've been able to do this strategy, and I'm excited to do it again this year. I set up a jigsaw. It's like I kind of call it a modified jigsaw. So all the students, they're in their groups, and they're in their it's more like a home/expert group instead of it being a home group and then breaking out to your expert group. And each group is assigned a standard. So since I have to spread people out a little more this year, it might be that I assign them 1 or 2 standard elements. And they basically kind of come up with a short, I don't want to say presentation, but like a short little lecture lesson where they're going to be reteaching it to their peers. And I give them about usually about 2-3 days where they can get everything together and give them time to practice. And then it takes us about, I would say it takes us about another 2 to 3 days just to get through all the groups. And each one, some people would call it like, like a student teach back. And the kids really enjoy it because rather than just doing it on paper and having just the selected responses, they're able to verbally explain and demonstrate their understanding as well. And that kind of ties back in the discussion piece because we can go back and make clarifications, address more misconceptions and things like that, even though we've done this throughout the school year. But, it's still some confusion even going into the EOG. I'm sorry. So again, like I've already said, you've got your expert groups or your home group, and you can give them a standard or a standard element because with 8th grade science, you've got your 5 standards, and then you've got each one your standard element. If you're like me, sometimes as I'm teaching, we will look at the standard elements and see, okay, these two kind of go hand in hand. And there have been times where we've been able to maybe combine the two. I know one off the top of my head that we combine is properties and changes in matter, physical and chemical properties and changes, because they go hand in hand. So you have one standard element that the practice is for them to plan and carry out an investigation, and then the other one is for them to construct an explanation with evidence. So usually that one we cover like a lengthy lab where we reinforce or emphasize the evidence and reasoning portion at the end. I will say, if you decide maybe that this is something you want to try, if you decide to do this as a grade, I would strongly recommend providing a rubric for the students. And I'll be honest, I didn't share the rubric that I would normally use with this because it changes each year. And I want you to make it, if you're going to do it, you make it fit for your students. What may work for me may not work for you, and how it's set up. So typically I've seen some teachers that I've worked with in the past, they decided to count it as what we call a major grade, which is about 40%. Some may do it as a daily, but again, you have to, I would say, look at how much time you're putting into it. Because the students, it's almost like a project. They put a lot into it and they do a really good job. But my recommendation is, if this is something you're going to try to do as a grade, then I would present them with the rubric. So that way they kind of know what you're looking for and what to go over. So another thing that helps as well. So we have the data folder where the students can go back and review their past assessments throughout the year, and they'll see the ranging level of DOK questions. The questions will range from level 1 all the way up to 3. And we try to give them more of level 2, 3 DOK questions versus 1. We also give them like a tentative, very generic EOG study guide. This is just a little snippet. So the study guide does not give them, it's not going to give them multiple choice questions, and it's not necessarily giving them higher order thinking questions or anything like that. This is just a chance for the students to kind of go back and fill in, kind of test their memory, fill in what they know, just kind of see what they can recall. So with the study guide, this gives the students the opportunity to basically do a memory dump, a mind dump, pulling out all the information that they know, because even though we've tried to keep them as organized as possible throughout the school year, their notes tend to still get out of place. They may lose them. They may have been out and possibly have forgotten to make it up. So this is just a way for us to give them a central location for those notes for them to refer back to. As you can see, we try to include as much visuals as possible because that's as we've been trained, we know the EOG, what we do know about it is that they are going to be presented with a good bit of visual. So this just, again, reemphasizes the visualization. Same thing with our assessments. So they actually tend to not do as well. They'll still do okay, but they tend to not do as well if we do not provide them with, or if we create an assessment that does not have a good bit of visuals. Now with the EOG study guide, we give them days to work on. Sometimes we may just say, okay, we're going to spend this whole week. This is what you're working on. One year I decided to make it progressive because I did not want to spend all of my review time on the study guide. So each day that they came in, we started about mid-February. And each day that they came in for their warm-up, I would give them about 5 to 10 minutes and say, hey, you're going to complete this section. I will be walking around double checking to make sure it's done. And that was how we filled up our study guide as well. I think that was the most effective approach that I did. So that's something else that myself and my PLC is kind of toying with trying again this year as we get ready to officially prepare. Now, this one we always try to do is just kind of give the students a mock EOG. When they come into class, we basically try to set up the assessment to mimic what we would think the EOG is like as much as possible. This is, it'll have all 5 standards, all 5 units on it. We try to make sure that it has approximately about how many questions would be on the EOG. And our classes are about 70 minutes long. So we kind of just adjust it from there. And as far as the time, giving them time to do it. And then we'll go over the answers with the student that way. And that the students really enjoy it because it kind of, again, it eases their anxiety, because we do have some that tend to get very anxious with the EOG, and we're like, y'all, it's okay. Don't take it too serious. Don't stress yourself out about it. We want you to do well, but this is just, kind of just practice. And of course, afterwards, they talk about how, okay, well, this worked, this helped, this did not help, because we do take the time going through, not just with the EOG, just about any assessment that we give them. We have the students reflect what worked, what do you think worked, what did not work, what are some strategies that seem to be beneficial. And actually, this is one year we actually did a school-wide mock EOG, where each day we did a different content area. So, and it may have been, okay, we decided we're going to do extended homeroom and just did a mock EOG, or we just did it as we rotated from class to class. Now, I will say sometimes we've given a mock EOG and we've just not made it as long, made it a little shorter so they can kind of get an idea of what to expect. And that has been just as effective as well. Okay. Now, a main resource that I've used in my PLC that we've used for the EOG is the assessment guide. That's provided by the State Department. And I'm going to try to scroll down all the way to science. Let's see, I'm trying to see if that's math. Okay, so once we get down to science, anytime that parents ask what can they do to prepare their child for the EOG, this is the first resource or reference that we give them. I know I'm not the only teacher that does this. And this is just for me fishing around on Google and looking at other teachers' pages that they have set up. Many of them upload this as a resource, and it's a very good resource because, it breaks the question down based on, is this selective response or is this a 2-part? what level question this is, what the answer choice is, and it goes through and gives them the reasoning, the explanation for every single answer choice. And the students have found it very helpful. The parents have found it very helpful because there is a portion too that you can go through, and it's just the questions, and it's almost like you can take it as your own quiz. Okay, so you have one here where it shows you the drop down question. So um, again, it gives you an idea of what to expect. And something else that we do as a PLC when we're planning, and this kind of goes back to, I would say, science literacy and planning our assessments, which I may do another topic on that separate from itself. One thing we look at is the verbiage that is used in the assessment guide, because our rule of thumb has been whatever verbiage they're using in the assessment guide is the verbiage that we should be in the vocabulary that we should be using with the students in class when we're having discussions and on their assessments, so that way they know what to expect. One example, I'll scroll back up because it comes up very often. With states of matter one year, when it was talking about the movement of the particles, the term that was used in the answers, and it was a little bit more extended than this, it was almost like it was the same picture. They used the term velocity. Well, based on our pacing, at the time that we gave the students the assessment, they had no clue what velocity was or what it meant. So they didn't know to tie it in with this question. We did not that year. We did not cover we didn't even bring up the vocabulary term velocity until we started talking about motion. So this has been a way to kind of show us, okay, some of the vocabulary you don't necessarily have to wait to use. You can go ahead and start incorporating it now. So the last thing that I'm going to bring up about EOG preparation is communication. Um, I know some people, everybody's different when it comes to parent communication, but what we do on my team of teachers, not necessarily my PLC, but I have an academic team myself, and then we have like an ELA teacher, math, and Georgia history. We send out a monthly newsletter. In the newsletter, I always talk about what we're currently working on and kind of give them tips or ideas of what they can be doing at home with their child or their student to help prepare them for the EOG. And I will do the same thing again. We will actually have a school-wide workshop, and the parents will come in, and each content area gets a moment to speak on their content area test. So again, my first resource that I pull up with the parents is the assessment guide and the blueprint. So that way they can see, okay, this is what we've been covering, and this is how the test is set up. This is about how much of each topic that your child is going to see on the EOG. And two, we show them the setup of the questions. These are the questions that they're going to see, because a lot of times we will overhear parents initially saying that science is just memorization, that it shouldn't be hard because it's just memorization. And so now we're getting them to understand and see, and we will show them the questions. Well, we're past the memorization now, the recall. Now we're looking at critical thinking and reasoning and application and tying in real world with science. And once they what gets them again, what's helped with the kids, is that real world piece. So once they see the real world piece, it kind of makes it a little more understanding for them. But again, just getting them to see how science, the content area in general, has changed over the years. Because I tell people all the time, just from me when I started teaching 7 years ago, it's changed so much and will continue to change. So what I will do is I know previously people have asked for different resources. I don't mind at all. Again, I will upload the links for the resources that I mentioned. Again, I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage people or teachers to refer to the assessment guide. I'm one, typically, I look out for it every year to see if they make any updates. It's like a golden rule book for me. So I will definitely upload the link for that, or if you're pretty confident and you can Google it and find it, that's fine too. And I again will upload the study guide that we constructed, and it was one we found. We went back and modified it to fit the Georgia Standards of Excellence for 8th grade science, and to make sure that it included specifically the content that it needed to cover for the EOG. But again, if you have any other questions, I'm here to help. You can just send me a message or email. Have a great day.